Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is Monarch Synchro here, bringing you a new segment that I'm gonna be calling it Yu-Gi-Oh! Playing Tips. This time I'm gonna be doing chain links since I know a lot of people don't really understand them, exactly how they work and stuff. But first of all, I want to give a shout out to a good friend of mine. His name is his YouTube username is D Watch Productions. Go check him out. He's barely starting to do like videos consistently. But he's got some pretty good videos. So go check him out. I'll put his link in the down bar. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. I wanted to talk about chain links because it's one of the most important things in Yu-Gi-Oh, knowing how they work. And if you know this, like, you can pretty much be one step ahead of your opponent. So this is like the first scenario that I want to talk about. So for example, let's say your opponent has, let's say they have like a face down monster. Let's pretend this is like a Dark Soul, and this is like your field is like this. Their field is like that. So they go ahead and they summon a Full Helm Knight. You chain Torrential Tribute, right? Your opponent decides to, well, let's say they had already flipped the Dark Soul, and then you summon this, and then you go Torrential, and then they activate a Solemn Judgment to negate your Torrential. What happens here is normally, like, let's say you have a Book of Moon. Normally you cannot chain this in the same chain link because Book of Moon is a quick play, so it's a spell speed 2, which means that it's not fast enough to be chained after Solemn, because Solemn is like a counter trap, and counter traps are like the fastest cards in the game. Pretty much they're faster than monster effects and stuff like that. So normally you can't do anything about that. So what you do is, after resolution of chain, after Solemn negates the Torrential, you can start a new chain immediately without your opponent having to activate anything in response. So after this goes away, the Solemn negates your Torrential Tribute. What you can do is you can ask your opponent, do you have anything else, like do you want to activate anything else after resolution of that chain link that just happened, and you can start a new one yourself. And what you can do is you can activate Book of Moon to switch the Full Helm now into defense mode to prevent your opponent from synchroing with the Dark Soul and the Full Helm Knight. Not a lot of people know this because they think that you have to chain Book of Moon right away to whatever like your opponent activates, and if it's a Solemn, then they're like, oh well, that's too late. And then what happens is they get like, they let them synchro, and then and then when like Unit tries to pop their back, then that's when they activate the Book of Moon, and that's too late because now Dark Soul can search. But yeah, that's one of the scenarios that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully that helps because not a lot of people know that you can start a new chain link right away like that. Um, Another thing that I want to talk about is oppression versus like MST and Dust Tornado. When your opponent, well, like let's say your opponent has an oppression phase up already, and you have like a Dark Soul and a Full Helm Knight, and like your opponent has like another back row or whatever. What you can do is, if you have an MST in hand, do not activate it before you synchro, cause what you can do is you can go ahead, flip the Dark Soul, synchro for like a Hyunlei, and then your opponent's gonna be like, okay, I pay 100 to negate the synchro summon. And what you can do is you're gonna be like, from your hand, you're gonna be chain MST to your oppression. What this is gonna do is your opponent pays the cost for activating the oppression, which is 800 life points. But since you activated MST to making a chain link 2, your chain is gonna go backwards, and chain links resolve backwards. So this is 1 and this is 2. So the MST is gonna destroy the oppression before it can activate, and your opponent still paid 800 life points. So you did it pretty much just to make your opponent pay life points, and you keep your synchro. So that's another thing. Like same with the Dust Tornado. If you have it set, you chain Dust Tornado after they pay that 800, not before. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. And then another big thing that not a lot of people, I think they know, is Jujitsu Master versus like searches like Flamville Dog and Shura. What happens here is, let's say your opponent has a Jujitsu face down. You don't know it's a Jujitsu, but you summon a Flamville Dog and attack into the Jujitsu Master, and it flips. The Jujitsu Master doesn't automatically send this to the top of the deck, because the Jujitsu Master's effect, it says that it sends the monster to the top of the deck after the damage step, which means that after the damage step, the Jujitsu hits the graveyard already. So that's why Jujitsu Master works with skill drain, because it activates when it hits the graveyard. So what happens here is, since Jujitsu Master's effect is a chain, is chain link, is mandatory. Its chain goes first, so it's chain link one, and then since Fire Dog's effect is optional because it says you can. What happens here is this becomes chain link two. So when at the end of the damage step, when you look at the opponent's defense and attack and whatever, and you see that this gets destroyed, this hits the graveyard. So this is chain link one, but since this is chain link two, this goes first. So you get to bring out a magician, um, attack with the magician, and then after everything is done, like this goes to the top of the deck. Same with Shura. When Shura attacks the Jujitsu and you discard Kalut, same thing happens. It's optional versus mandatory. So mandatory effects always go first. And if it's like mandatory versus mandatory, turn player gets priority. So let's say that this was like a mandatory effect, for example. This goes first and this goes second. So this would send it back if this wasn't optional, of course. But since it is, then it goes the other way around. So just keep that in mind, guys, that you do get your effects with searchers versus this, so that you don't let your opponent like trick you. Oh, same thing with Goyo. Same thing. Like Goyo attacks this if it's face down. Same thing. Goyo takes it. Goyo takes it, and the Goyo goes back to the extra deck afterwards. So just keep that in mind, guys. And I wanted to talk about that. Hopefully next segment I'll have something more interesting. But just wanted to get this started. I hope you guys like it, and it goes up to D Watch Productions. And I'll talk to you guys later.